Hello and welcome back to the Guns on Pegs podcast. We're back with episode 6 of series 2, and once again I'm joined by Chris Horn, managing director of Guns on Pegs. Before we go any further, and Chris doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I wanted to say a huge thanks to everyone who's been listening. Making these podcasts has been a real lifeline for me during this lockdown, and the fact that you guys are all listening means that we can keep doing it. So the cringeworthy bit's out the way. Chris, we do just need to update people on what's happening because we gave them the wrong information in the last episode.
George, I can't carry on without replying to that. I can't agree more with you. We're stuck at home, and it's been tricky. And I think the January one's been tricky for us shooters more than anything because it's ended the season early. So here's to that, and thank you to everyone obviously who's listening. Yes, we did. We've last time we told you that Ben Randall would be joining us, but we've made a little shift around with the order. Got on the phone, and the reason for that is that Ben's got something really exciting coming, and we said, right, hold fire, we'll delay it a couple of weeks, then he can tell you all about it. So that's going to come up next time, but this one we've pulled through the order, and I'm delighted to say this is our Pigeon shot episode. So we have with us today the author of the Pigeon Shooter's Diary, which we'll come back to in a bit, a contributor to Shooting Times, often seen on the front cover, master pigeon shot, expert gun fitter, and dance floor superstar. It's Tom Payne.
Hey boys, how you doing?
All good, mate. How are you?
All right, I'm pleased I'm second best to Ben.
No, you've been promoted up the order.
He's going to be very disappointed.
Do you want to respond to my dance floor superstar comment?
I'll get to that bit. It was one hell of a dance off that.
Well, I think in order that we can get there and put it in context, I've got to ask you straight away, Tom, what's that you're drinking?
So I'm actually drinking Hooky Gold, Hook Norton Brewery. The reason I'm drinking it, they're really good supporters of the Game Fair. One of my favourite places. It's like Glastonbury to me. Anyway, so I've gone for Hooky Gold. James Clark and Serena Williams, big shooting people. The brewery itself, massive field sports fans. Obviously, they support the Game Fair hugely. Drinking Hooky Gold just reminds me of, there's a few Game Fair stories, but myself, Crofty, and Marcus Janssen, we were heading off to the field party, and we'd all decided that we'd go a bit sensible. And halfway through that day, do you guys remember when Rob came out with those stuffed ptarmigan and grouse things from Churchill?
Rob Fennett, EJ, yes, yeah. the teddy grouse.
Yeah, the teddy grouse things. Well, we'd acquired a few of these anyway, so we got into the pub and had a few Hooky Golds, and it was all getting quite good fun. These grouse fluffy toys suddenly became rugby balls after a few beers. We then thought it'd be really good, let's start doing lineouts, and obviously we got Crofty with us, former England and Lions
Tom Croft, this is for everyone's benefit.
Yep, former podcast guest.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so we've got Crofty's with us, and anyway, so we started the lineouts, and I think Frank was lifting. Well, he was attempting to lift at the front, but Crofty was. Well, we started lifting, but he lifted me so high, he chucked me into the top of the pub. The
canopy, and I remember it well.
Yeah,
into the roof of the marquee.
Yeah. I was sort of just hanging there, and at what point, it was all quite good fun, and then security came over. But Crofty, being Crofty, and he's a fairly strong fella, forgot I was up there, and proceeded in having a health and safety meeting with security while I was still stuck up there, holding on to the grouse really happily. Didn't spill a drop with pint in hand. So, yeah, Hooky Gold.
Brilliant.
Good man.
And then obviously Marcus was, he's a bit soft, so he was quivering in the corner, not wanting to join in.
God, he's gonna love responding to you on that one, isn't he?
Yeah, he's gonna get me there.
So the reason I called you a dance floor superstar is I think it was a different year. I can't remember.
No, it was the next day. That was
it the next day?
It was because that was at Ragley, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, it was Ragley because we all camped there, so it was the next day.
Yeah, so we hosted one of our, I think, somewhat legendary Guns on Pegs parties now, where they're kind of for exhibitors, they're for our clients towards the end of the evening on a Saturday night, and the party was in full swing, and then Tom here just starts dancing, clears the place, and a mutual friend of ours started recording this on her phone, put it on Instagram on the Sunday. Monday evening, I happened to be looking through Instagram, and this thing came up. The search page, it's like suggested videos. This thing had 70,000 views on Instagram of Tom dancing in the I couldn't believe it. Anyway, it was hilarious.
That was quite good fun. It was a Chinese chap in a leather jacket, wasn't it?
Well, yes, indeed. It was just brilliant. Anyway, if you type it on Instagram, Game Fair Dancing or something like that, I'm sure it will come up. But George, what are you drinking?
Well, I've been looking forward to this actually because I remembered over Christmas that a mate of mine, who's also a very keen shot, bought a pub last year, which was obviously not brilliant timing. Yeah. But it's quite a well-known pub in Hampshire, and it's particularly well-known for its microbrewery, which it's had since before microbrewing was cool. And they used to win a lot of awards at the sort of beer festivals and what have you. So I thought I'd try and support them a bit, and I bought a mixed case of their beers, and it arrived the day after our previous podcast recording. And it's been all I can do to hold a couple of bottles back for this episode. The pub is called the Flower Pots in Cheriton, and I'm drinking Cheriton Porter at the moment, which is very, very nice, quite sweet, sort of bit of a coffee tone to it, very nice. And then for after that, I've also got Gooden's Gold. It's a golden ale. So yeah, I've been really struggling. They've been sitting out on the balcony looking at me for a fortnight, and I've had to really exercise some self-control. But it comes highly recommended. Check them out. Order yourself a case. They do mixed cases, and they've got about 8 or 9 different beers to choose from. And yeah, very highly recommended. The Flower Pots Brewery. So yeah, Chris, what have you got?
So it's actually quite tricky coming up with drinks for each of these episodes because we've done quite a lot of them now. So we're really sort of pushing boundaries and trying to find different drinks. And partly because of lockdown, I don't really go out much. So I have to venture back to the drinks cupboard and see what I find. I've pulled out an absolute perfect one for this week's episode, and I did not know it was in there. I have got a gin and tonic. I usually go for a beer. I've got a gin and tonic, and I've got a Martin Miller's gin and tonic. And the Martin Miller's gin I have was from a little miniature that we got from our GWCT ball that we shared the table at, Tom. Do you remember? And they gave out the little Martin Miller's gins. And I took a load home at the end of the night, obviously drunk, don't remember it. I found one in the back of the cupboard and I thought, oh, you beauty, that is the perfect drink for the podcast with Tom. So the GWCT ball, which feels like a world gone by. I mean, like, God, can we remember, how fun would it be when we could do that again? But
is that when I was dressed up as a pirate on stage with a plastic guitar?
How do I not remember this?
Probably because you were filling your pockets with stolen gin.
Yeah,
it wasn't stolen. It was Martin Miller's kind sponsorship of the GWCT.
Just robbing the place.
So I've got a lovely gin and tonic. So yeah, all very good.
Right, chaps. We've got important decisions to make. This is the section called Whose Bird Is It Anyway, which is where we ask our dear listeners to send us in their shooting dilemmas. And this one comes from somebody we're calling Fred. And he has written, I've been helping on my local syndicate for the last 2 years, and I've been beating there since I was 15. I'm now 23, and I've been a full gun for the last 3 years. On the shoot, there are 3 of us that have been doing most of the work, as we don't have a full-time keeper. We've been working really hard, and we're all really proud of how things turned out, despite all the challenges of this season. After some great days, the 3 of us were rewarded with some duck flights on the 2 ponds we have on the shoot. On the weekend that I got the call to go on the flight, I was on a 2-hour drive to my other half's house, so I couldn't go. I was gutted, but then an hour later I was asked if I could get off work on Monday to go on a morning flight on some geese and then hang around the duck ponds till everything went quiet at lunchtime. Without thinking, I said yes, but now had to figure out how to get out of work. Now I'm lucky enough to work with my dad, but as he was city born and bred and doesn't really shoot, I knew he wouldn't understand why I wanted the morning off. So I came up with a cunning plan. I had a meeting with a customer in the afternoon, so I would say I'd be out in the morning as well to meet a supplier in the same area, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, if you'll pardon the pun. My dad accepted the idea as a good plan, and the game was afoot. So the next day came, and the plan went off without a hitch, with me rushing out in the morning, having a great morning in the hide, then having a quick wardrobe change before going to see the customer. Monday night came round and I was in the clear and feeling good after a productive day, or so I thought. I later learned that I'd made the rookie mistake of being seen in the background of a friend's Instagram story. Now my dad, being a million years old, doesn't have Instagram, but my younger brother does. He sent me a screenshot of myself in the background of the story with the caption, "So how was the supplier meeting?" I now knew he had a cunning plan of his own. I'm being threatened with exposure unless I let my brother shoot the next day. Do I let my brother shoot, or do I own up to my dad stroke boss and take the hit but feel good knowing that my brother will not have won and will not be enjoying my shooting?
He's in trouble, isn't he?
Tom, what would you do?
Well, how big's the pond? That's what I'd be thinking.
Well, obviously enough that they had a pretty good time.
Well, I mean, if the pond's big enough, the two of them could shoot at the same time.
It doesn't sound like that's an option. I think that because of the way the syndicate's run, there's one gun, and it's either him or his brother. I think that's why he's so vexed and felt emailing us.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chris. I think you're right. Personally, I think that to cave to his brother would probably set a dangerous precedent, in that he could probably then continue to use that blackmailing technique until such time as the story comes out anyway. You're probably better off just to take the hit now. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, Tom, go on.
Well, after the season we've just had, I wouldn't give anything away. I'd just go and shoot.
This is the thing, isn't it? He's gonna be giving away a day at the start of next season when we're all pent up, and he'll be wanting to get out like there's no tomorrow, and he's going to regret it even more when that comes round. So I think he needs to think ahead a little bit and think about what a bad decision that would be. So I think he's got to take his brother on. Surely he can dig up some dirt on his brother and hold that against him. Basically, get on the scout, because you do not want to be letting him win this argument, because it's going to come back to haunt him.
Never turn down a day's shooting.
Yeah, very good point. And I've also just remembered that this is his younger brother.
Give him a good kicking then.
Well, I'm not sure Guns on Pegs can be seen to be endorsing violence, but I'm sure that there is something that can be done there as far as younger brothers are concerned. And I speak as the eldest of three brothers. At least one of whom could very easily beat me up.
Right, so we're telling him, hold firm, risk the wrath of his dad, and just make sure that his brother doesn't win.
Agree.
Yeah.
And shoot straight.
Yeah, exactly right.
Got to be worthwhile, hasn't it?
So he has to follow up with us. We need to know how this is going to go.
Yeah. So there you go, Fred. There's your answer. Go shooting. And a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters will be in the post to you to wear on your next day. So that's nice for you. Tom, we'll be sending some to you as well.
Can't wait.
So we'll look forward to seeing those on.
You're going to be the privileged owner of a pair of these incredible garters. But we want your confessions. And obviously, if you send in a message like our Fred sent in, something that we can air, then you will get a pair of the most exclusive garters in shooting. Simply email pod@gunsonpegs.com. And we've had another contender. Oh, go on, Tom. What is it you want to add in?
I'd rather be on one of your films, with everybody.
You're very welcome to be on the next film we do, Tom. You just got to sort the day out for it.
Just very dreamy.
It was. We've had another contender for spreading the pod far and wide. So this is another thing you can do to win a pair of these garters. Just simply tell us who you're sharing it with, how far you've extended the listening. The listeners to the Guns on Pegs podcast. This message says this. It says, "Hello, I've been enjoying your great podcast while driving to work and cooking dinner in Chicago. Please keep up the good work. It's fun, informative, and fast becoming my favourite podcast, even ahead of Joe Rogan. Regards, Nick." So that last bit blew me away slightly. I'm sure he's joking, but can I just clarify? Joe Rogan was paid 82 million quid by Spotify for exclusivity. So that is high praise indeed. Spotify, if you're listening, our email is pod@gunsonpegs.com. And I suppose we'll do your deal with some garters in return.
Yeah, and before we move on to the sort of the proper pigeon chat that we've got lined up, we've also had a nice message from Jack Bryant, who emailed us very early in the morning. He heard the Sporting Agent episode when, Chris, you were drinking Old Rosie cider, and he got in touch to say that he's also a fan of Old Rosie, to the extent that he's named his baby daughter Rosie in its honour. So as a relatively new father myself, Well played, sir. That is top naming skills.
George, you could go Scrumpy and Jack.
No, we've got Cassie and Otis, and I've managed to slip Otis Brown under the radar, and I think that Otis Brown sounds like a West Indian fast bowler from the 1980s.
He does.
Very pleased about it.
So, Tom, we're here to talk about pigeon shooting. We've got quite far in, and we haven't even really mentioned it. But therein lies the beauty of shooting. And actually, most of the time we spend together is we're not talking about shooting at all, really. But we have been seen in the pigeon hide. So, what we really want to know, kick this thing off. I mean, obviously, you've got a huge amount of knowledge. You've even written a book on the subject, which we're keen to get a bit of an insight in. But I think the best place to probably start is kick us off with your top tips. So I'm thinking for part-timers. I mean, most of us out here, we're lucky enough occasionally to go pigeon shooting. What are the key things that you think the average Joe needs to know, or the things that they should remember?
It's really difficult. And I do feel for a lot of guys who do shoot pigeons, because obviously they're working during the week and then their weekends are their only chance to go out. So by hook or by crook, they're going to be shooting on a Saturday or a Sunday. The problem is the conditions might not be right. The chance of doing reconnaissance is, it really is difficult for the part-time pigeon shooter. From a professional point of view, you wouldn't do it, just going out for the sake of it. But, for 99% of people, they want to get out at the weekend and have a shot. And I completely understand that. So it's really difficult. And that's probably the reason why, a lot of people will have the talent as pigeon shooters. But it's actually having the time. A lot of it is the time to actually put in everything that you need to get to that point of maximizing the situation that you're in.
So by that, do you mean reconnaissance, basically?
Yeah, I mean, your reconnaissance is everything. I mean, you'd always say one day's reconnaissance, one day's shooting. As you become the word expert, I can't stand the word. I just think, there is no such thing as an expert. I just know a little bit more than other people because I have the opportunity to be out and about doing a bit more. But yeah, you've got to be out watching and seeing what's going on. But it's not just reconnaissance. One day you might see a situation that's looking great, but the conditions the next day may not be correct to shoot it or right to shoot it. You've got to be fairly disciplined when you pick and choose when you want to go. It's not easy, and I think that's why a lot of people really struggle with regards to. I mean, I think it was a stat taken a few years back that the national average bag size is 12. So. It's not.
That's about 11. That's about 11 more than my average.
I was going to say it's about twice as many as I normally manage.
But I do think it is because guys don't have the time to put into it, and they're going to go regardless because they want to get out. It's their hobby. It's what they love doing. They'd rather be sitting in a pigeon hide in poor conditions than not.
Tom, in that situation where you want to go out and you've decided you're going out, you've managed to get the day clear, you're going to go no matter what can people do on that day to make sure that they have the best possible chance?
Best possible chance of the conditions for that time of year, because it's not the same all the time. People worry too much about bag sizes as opposed to maximizing a situation. So wherever I go, you're trying to maximize the situation that's in front of you. If you do that, you've achieved your goal. You've done a good job. Anybody can go and shoot 100 pigeons if you've got thousands and thousands of pigeons in the right conditions. Not everybody can go and shoot 10 pigeons when you've only got 35, say, going to a watering tank during the summer. So the skill of the pigeon shooter isn't down to the bag size. It's down to the situation that they've actually achieved. So, they may not be. I would take winter for example. So they may be tricky to decoy over a winter crop, but how are you going to maximize what you're going to do? Is it better to maybe flight them to feed? Is it possibly better to roost them late evening or have a sort of afternoon flight stroke roost? At the end of the day, it's crop protection. You're trying to manage the number of birds that are damaging a crop. How are you best going to do that? And it's not always sitting in a hide with a magnet out, putting your hair out. There are other ways of.
And I guess it's picking the right tactics for the right day, the right time of year. It's like salmon fishing in that regard. One day a fly might work, a week later it might not. And similarly, if you're out decoying 1 week or 1 month, that same spot might not be the right thing to be doing. You might be, as you say, better off going and roost shooting or flighting them, and picking that right tactic for that right day is the key. Do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if we take, I don't know, any month, I look at a field, you see birds feeding, for example. I'm very aware of weather conditions, wind conditions, various options, because things can change. You can go from a certain mile per hour wind and direction, it could suddenly swing on you. It could swing on you during the day. That can completely change the whole situation. So you have to have that armory in your bag. But whenever I'm shooting, I'm constantly thinking about how am I, I'd say the word again, how am I going to maximize? How am I going to really get in to make sure that I make the most of this day, this afternoon, for the benefit of the farmer, benefit of the landowner, and obviously for yourself, because obviously you want to have plenty of shooting, or some shooting that is possibly there. It's a real tricky one, because there are no hard, fast written rules. Every birds are very different in certain counties. For example, with regards to mechanics, everybody is obsessed with magnets and flappers and things like that, which are great in certain locations. It's really odd. Over the years, I realised that certain counties, if the standard of pigeon shooter is very good, the mechanics continue to work, because birds are being killed over they're being killed over the top of mechanics. So you're not educating birds. If you go to a county, Essex, perfect example, is a really heavily shot county. Everybody's out chasing them. 9 times out of 10, I'll be using just classic dead birds in cradles. And you've got to go in with an open mind, with a battle plan, but an open mind on the situation. You can't be stubborn about it.
I want to ask about hide setup, because I mean, again, I don't do this enough. I just follow you, and you do it. You just tell me where to put the things.
Not after last time. Tell them how many. What was your bag, Christopher? How many shots?
Shot wise, we don't talk about shots. We just. I thought we had quite a good day.
It was a very good day. I think you shot 70, 77, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. It was.
I mean, the fact
was very good.
The fact I had to bring a quad bike and trailer out to pick up your cartridges is neither here nor there. But
I was watching the Ashes on my mobile in the corner of the hide. People are going to hate me saying that, but it was right at the end of a crucial part. I had it on in the corner, and I was loving life. I was just knock over a pigeon or two, keep an eye on the cricket. I mean, what more could you want? I wasn't really there for.
Can I just jump in on Chris here? So Chris, actually, for those of you who haven't met Chris personally, he is a very well turned out chap who comes across very well. And when Chris turned up in the morning in his suede Gucci loafers, tight chinos, some sort of weird soft fabric tight camo top, and a Purdy waistcoat, I thought, we've got a right one here. And off he went. I mean, I actually thought I was going to have to wheel a drinks trolley out to you at one point and give you a foot massage.
You see, we're getting onto it, aren't we? But, that was my my Harkila camo blended with a bit of tweed on top. I just like to sort of keep all the various forms of shooting into one dress. So
you're wearing a dress.
Well, one outfit.
He's like one of these professional footballers that goes into battle and finishes battle, and not a single hair is out of place.
Well, thank you for the abuse, Tom.
No problem.
So, actually, it reminds me that day. I was going to ask you about kit, and you've kind of alluded to it already. I remember that day. Actually, it was the first time I used one of those idle back chairs, which I have to say are epic.
Yeah.
That really made a difference. The little swingy rotational chairs just support you in your lower back, and it's great to shoot from. You barely have to stand up from them. What when it comes to kit, obviously you're a big fan of those, but what are the other things that you think are a necessity? What are the things that you think your first things you'd be buying, and then the other things that maybe you only do if you're doing it lots and a bit of a luxury?
Okay, so basic kit, I'll be fairly frank about it, and I don't mean to be rude, but 90% of the kit that's made today is utter shit. It's so it is so badly made. The nets are rubbish. The decoys are terrible. The hide poles are absolutely diabolical. You're going to get people get bamboozled by price. They sort of think, oh yeah, I can get this and get. I mean, just some of it is just rubbish. When the magnets started back in the day, they were so well built. They're still kicking on, and they've had absolute abuse from myself. But the new ones, just the kit, it's just. What you get now is just terrible. What you want to look at, I suppose it's like buying a decent pair of shoes. Buy a good pair of shoes, they last a long time. Buy a bad pair, and you'll be buying a pair every year. Yeah, it's the same with Pigeon kit. But you want good nets. I mean, ex-army shops, the good old school camo nets. But get a hold of those, because these ones that you get, I mean, you'll spend most of your time tangled in them. They're just terrible nets. The high poles, the bottoms break, the tops are rubbish. It's just terrible. Decoys. Yeah, I'm not one for using plastics, but the plastic decoys you get these days are just horrendous, so badly made. Does anybody want to start pigeon shooting?
There's not a lot out there then. So what's left?
But however, if you're willing to get the right kit, and these aren't plugs at all. Your shooting seat's very, very important. It's the height of the shooting seat, and that's if you choose to. My seat is just there effectively for me to sit on. I prefer to stand and shoot. Footwork, movement, etc., to maximize my angles when I'm shooting. But your seat's got to be comfortable, well made, and your knees must be below your hips. Okay, a lot of guys. I mean, you see somebody sitting on an old picnic stool, and you sort of think, well, what are you doing down there, chum? It's how your body sets up. You want to, but it's movement as well. So it's slow movement up, slow movement down. You want to have plenty of control. So your seat's important. Hide poles have got to be robust. I mean, you mentioned idle back with the seats. Hide poles. Finally, Nick Tate, Flightline Decoys. He makes amazing flappers. Nick has made some proper hide poles, and they are really good hide poles. I mean, I used to make my own. I mean, they're bloody heavy, but it is what it is. If you're in good conditions or windy conditions, you don't want. There's nothing worse than the hide falling down, flapping around you. If you want to brash it up with big stuff, you've got to be able to have poles that can handle it. So Nick's really come out with. I think they're called. He sent me a load. They're called sniper poles. They're absolutely fantastic. I actually used them for the first time on Monday. Monday just gone, first day of 2021. Nets wise, I'd always go the ex-army nets. Leave and a mixture of nets. You don't want the same colours. Brilliant bit of kit. Wire cradles for dead birds, fantastic. But you can make your own. A lot of stuff you can make your own. Wire props, spikes. But be careful with your dogs when you're running your dogs over the ground. And decoys, the really good old decoys were the old flexi-coys. But enforcer decoys, I've tried those. I would have said they're probably the best plastics out there at the moment. But if you're allowed, just keep a few dead birds back, put them in freezer bags. It keeps the feathers in good order. Single freezer bags. Nothing beats a dead bird. Simple as that. With regards to mechanics are great. Again, Nick, he does some brilliant flappers. I mean, Nick, and he won't mind me saying this, he is an absolute anorak when it comes to building flappers. He's constantly thinking about it, but he really has thought about it, and they're certainly worth a look at. And the magnets, there's various companies. You just have to find one that suits and is one that's well made. But I wouldn't get too worried about mechanics before you've learnt the art. If you learn how to decoy with traditional methods, that means that you've got to watch the bird, get yourself in the right, all the basics of pigeon shooting, get yourself in the right place. If you can shoot a bag of pigeons with static dead birds in cradles, then you're learning how your mechanics work will only add to possibly improving a day, or depending on where you are, could actually lessen a day. But learn the core basics first, then worry about everything else. A magnet will not get you 100 pigeons. What will get you 100 pigeons is getting yourself in the right place, in the right conditions over at that time of year. That's what will get you to 100 pigeons. Not buying yourself a magnet hoping that every pigeon in the county is going to drop on top of you, because it just doesn't work like that.
Now that's proper consumer advice, that is.
I'm feeling like there's a continuous tone here, though. When we talk to other guests on our podcast, and basically the art to getting good at everything is just do it loads. And I know that's nothing new, but it's so frustrating to hear when you're stuck behind your desk for 5 days a week, isn't it?
A good friend of mine and somebody I've learned a lot from, got a chap called Will Garfit. He's, I hang on his every word when it comes to the pigeon job. There aren't many people alive today that shot as many as him. And Patrick set as a task for the ST, and the task was.
This is Patrick Galbraith, the editor, by the way.
Yeah. He set us a task, myself and Will, that we were only allowed to go out with a gun and a bag of cartridges. That was it. We had to go and find the field, find the crop, find the situation, build natural hides, start from scratch, etc. And it all became, basically, it was effectively a fun competition, but you had to go out and start. And sometimes some of your best days are you literally go out with a gun and a bag of cartridges. But Will's, it's quite, it's fair to say that he's fairly competitive. So off we went, and it was on the same farm. I think Will shot over some failed rape, and I shot over a poorly sown mustard game crop. And knowing full well that Will's a master at the game, and I thought I'm going to have to be a bit quick here. So Will, he's very, very so in tune, and he whacked a couple on the way in. And then I can see him dragging branches out to the middle of the field, and he set himself up, and I can hear him wanging away, and I'm thinking, oh, dearie me. So I thought, right, best thing to do. So I walked up a hedgerow, nobbled a couple, just a bit of long hazel stick cut out of the hedge, made a sort of, not so much angels, but floaters, natural hide. And then once I was up and running, then obviously the battle's on. I could hear Will popping away, and I think Will finished on 89. I finished on a 73. We weren't a million miles from each other, but it just shows you that what you can do. You don't actually need all the kit. It's understanding the bird, going out, enjoying it, not worrying about numbers, and doing it the old school way. Sometimes is actually more satisfying than lugging this and that, especially if you don't know how to use it.
A lot of truth in that, but I suppose you are getting lucky. But I think for most people, it's just about being out, isn't it? So whether you're actually walking up a hedgerow, doing what you say, or putting all the effort in, actually, you look back on it and it's just as much fun because you're out and you're doing what you enjoy. And
yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it, don't be lazy. I mean, so many guys, they'll take the easy option because they can drive to this spot, so they'll just go there. If you want to achieve success with pigeons, throw the kitchen sink at it. If it's on, get on with it. Get yourself out. If you put the time in, the driving around and the money into the diesel, and spent the time, and you've got the conditions right, don't sort of think to yourself, no, I might go here instead because it's a bit of an effort to get over there. Go, actually go for it and do it properly. And if you fail, you'll learn from that. And if you don't, brilliant. Stick it in the game diary and away you go.
So, Tom, I've got a question that might be quite difficult to answer, but can you give an idea as to roughly how many pigeons there are in the UK? I mean, obviously it fluctuates across the year, but a rough figure?
I think the last figure, I think RSPB have got it at 5.2 million pairs. I personally think, especially through the general license last year and a few phone calls with some well-known pigeon guys, it was sort of all hands on deck for that. I certainly think you could double it, treble it with regards to what we have.
Wow.
So, I mean, certainly over the last 5 years, they've bred very well. It's a well-known fact that a pigeon can breed in every month of the year, especially now. We've had some fairly mild winters. There's plenty of food source out there that allows them to, for their pigeon milk, good habitat. They'll just keep, they'll crack on. They're a real survivor. I mean, just look at people's gardens. I mean, how many people in the suburbs have got a pair of pigeons in their garden? Well, tally that up, and you've got a few.
Yeah.
If they're bringing a pair off twice, 3 times a year, then obviously your rural pigeons. I mean, the number's huge. The number is huge, and the cost.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you know what the effect is from a cost point of view on damage, crop damage?
Well, I mean, there were loads of figures. I think it was 75 million on oilseed rape.
That's huge.
I mean, if you look at it back, so a pigeon's crop is quite something. I mean, I once counted 28 acorns out of a pigeon's crop. I mean,
what?
Yeah, I mean that is huge. It's like, I mean, that's when they're on the acorns, you're flighting them into wood. It's like a bulletproof vest at the front.
That's why I can't kill them.
But if you look at say a normal mug of tea and maybe nip a bit off the top, stick a load of wheat in that. That is not all the time, obviously, but that is effectively what a pigeon can consume in a day. To to put a figure of, I mean, it could be huge. I mean, I actually started to think about more the damage they would cause per bird. I mean, it was quite feasible to think that a single bird could cause through a year at least a fiver's worth of damage.
You add it all up.
When you add it all up, when you think realistically what they can consume, and if depending on what it is, I mean, things like maize, beans, it'll only take one feed a day, but they could have a couple of innings at it through the day. That's a lot of food.
Well, it just goes to show why the general license debacle was such a big deal.
Oh.
It's quite clear to see, isn't it? And it's really easy to understand how people outside of the countryside don't understand why it was a big deal, because they don't understand all the cogs in the wheel.
The whole thing was just, for us guys, it's not, yes, we're killing pigeons, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to manage numbers in various counties on various farms and estates. That's what, myself as a pigeon shooter, that's what I'm trying to do.
That actually leads me on to the next question that I had, which is that population concentrated in particular parts of the country? I mean, my intuition tells me that the areas of the country where the farming is mostly arable is going to have a higher population than where there's a lot of livestock. Yeah, would that be fair?
It is. I mean, obviously, your arable counties like your Lincolnshire, Norfolks, Hampshire's a very good county. Home counties are good. A lot of really heavily hit pigeon farms are near towns and villages, just because of the breeding areas that they've got. I mean, the borders of Scotland, they can shoot some huge bags up there. I mean, it's livestock, but you've still got your forage crops, your forage maize, things like that. The north can get a lot at certain points, but I mean, your classic counties are your big arable counties, yeah. But then those counties, depend on habitat as well. They've got to have the right breeding grounds, roosting grounds.
And the other thing that I wanted to ask you is, I've seen it suggested that maybe there's pigeons that migrate across from Europe in the winter from sort of Scandinavia and so on, but I don't know if there's any truth in that or not.
No, I'm pleased you brought that up, George, because a few years ago I was chatting to an old boy and he was talking about farming back in the 50s, 60s, and it was all to do with the introduction of rape. And a lot of these conversations you have are with the old boys who are around the sort of the coastal counties. And they'll always talk about, now, this is not, I can't guarantee this as a fact. I mean, these are just conversations you have with these old countrymen who have, been shooting pigeons, and there has to be an element of truth. But I had a very interesting conversation with one chap that was actually then backed up by another chap 2 years ago. So, in this country, the aptly named wood pigeon is, if the wild food source is high, that's where wood pigeons are going to be. They'll be on the acorns. Okay, beech mast, ivy berries, hawthorn. That's where they're going to be. If this country offers them the wild food source, that's where they'll be. However, if you think about those vast oak forests in France, we're talking tens of thousands of acres square of oak forests. He was saying that he would remember, and I've actually seen it in Kent, that you see flocks really, really, really high up, and it's whether they're migrating over or whether they're actually migrating through the country, moving around the bottom of the country. But he would say that he was, as a young boy in the 50s, he'd watch absolute droves heading out over to effectively, or what he thought was Europe. When they started growing rape, it was a bit like a sudden break. They've suddenly gone, we've got a winter food source. And people talk about migratory birds, and everybody presumes that it's migratory birds from Europe. However, the way that these chaps were saying is that we, as the UK, we are the feeder country. We are the holding country. Okay, and what's happening is that back then, when they didn't have the winter food source, that's where they were going. They'd be heading out to France. They would do the oaks in France, and from France, they would then head over to the cork oaks in Spain. From Spain, they would then come back, maybe dragging a few Europeans with them. So it's not migratory from them, it's from us and them coming back.
That's very interesting, and the complete opposite to the story that I'd heard. So yeah.
And rape kind of put the brakes on that. Now, interestingly, because of the cost of growing rape and the issues that now, with the banning of the insecticide for flea beetle, spraying, desiccating, it's just growing rape in this country has become a huge expense, and also bad weather, trying to establish it, has become a huge expense to farmers. So it's gradually happened over the last 3 years. I started to notice it if we go back to where are we now, 2000, probably it would have been winter of 2017-18 that you started to see. You weren't seeing the density. You weren't seeing the population, the winter. The winter flocks. The density of pigeons within the country were a lot less, and it's got worse and worse. And this winter has been horrendous. Now add that with, another crop that's really kept. Look at our game shooting, maize game strips. They love maize. The food content and the food quality for those pigeons is huge. But look at the amount of game cover that has been reduced this year because of shoots deciding either to reduce days, maybe not shoot, maybe not put down as much cover because of the situation we were in. Again, it's another winter food source that they've lost. So even though the acorns were heavy, beech mast was okay. You've got smaller pockets of populations, not big flocks. So I just wonder whether, is it in their
instinctive thing? They've gone, no, there's no oilseed rape anymore. I'm off to France.
Yeah, I just want, and they have to go and find a food source. I was speaking to, the boys were talking about, Lincolnshire was starting to fill up, but that's stuff coming from north where they've had really bad weather, bad snow, and suddenly stuff coming down the coast. Well, what's to say that we haven't lost the bottom half of the country to France? We'll see. There's got to be some truth in it. These old boys they're not silly. They're not silly, and I just wonder whether there is some truth in that, and whether we have lost a population, and whether we'll soon see come the spring drillings.
Cool. So, that's really interesting. But I've now got a question that's very dear to my heart, which is, why is it so easy to miss a pigeon at close range?
Because you're
Yeah, we shoot the other day, and I didn't cover myself with glory.
No, you're fine. The problem with lots of people shooting is that everybody worries so much about lead. Whenever you talk to anybody about any sort of shooting, it's always lead. Agreed? That's what they're worried about. Okay, that's like speaking to a top batsman and sort of saying, "What are you worried about?" He said, "I'm just all I've got to do is that ball's going fast. I've got to swing at it. I must launch my bat at it because that's going to improve what goes on." None of it works like that. The bird is the priority. Everybody's eyes are different. Everybody moves a gun at a different speed. Lead is secondary. Lead happens from the bird. And what you'll find is you wouldn't believe, and not just pigeons, how many people overcook stuff because they shit themselves. They panic, they forget, they just suddenly go, oh, it's a long way away. I must have to chuck my gun out there, instead of just going through the process of worrying about. The bird's the priority. The bird is the priority always. Line first. From that bird, you field craft, read the bird, watch what it's doing on the wing, steady everything down, lock into it nicely, and lead comes off the bird, and you'll be seeing that pigeon coming into the decoys. You'd be panicking, rushing, chucking your gun about. It's just got to steady the ship up. Nothing can fly faster than you can move a gun. It's as simple as that. You mentally have to slow it all down.
So do you think on close range, though, people are poking at them as well then? Because, obviously, long range is very different.
A shotgun's not designed to shoot stationary targets.
So if it's flying straight at you close, it's tricky.
Yeah, anything right on top of you is close. That's why people bugger grouse up. They think the closer it is, the easier it is. Well, it doesn't really work like that. So you've got to give yourself, your eyesight, your body, your technique, your style. You have to allow yourself to shoot it. If you let something get on top of you, you've had it. You're going to panic and chuck your gun at stuff.
Mm.
But obviously, when you came out, Chris, I had to put your decoys in quite close because
I only bother shooting at the stuff ages away because I like to test myself. I'm not there to get your numbers up. And
mate, there was a reason. There was a reason that everywhere was covered with lofting poles, 25 yards away from you in those trees. That's why I brought the air rifle out for you, and then you started complaining about the recoil.
Oh, you're a good man. I want to ask you a question about pigeon from a game meat point of view, because actually it reminded me after that day that you're talking about. We took a load of pigeon home, and I had a couple of friends over the next day who don't shoot at all, and I don't really think of eating pigeon before. But I cooked up a pigeon satay from the pigeon that we had that day that we shot. And it went down an absolute storm. And they've always said, "Oh, when are we coming back to have pigeon satay at yours?" And it's so lovely to hear that from people that you wouldn't usually associate with eating that sort of meat. Tell me, I want to know what the best dishes are, because you've obviously eaten a lot of pigeon. I mean, you look like one as well, so you must have eaten a lot. And what are the best dishes that you could recommend?
My favourite, and it is my favourite. So for those passionate pigeon shooters, you would have heard of the chap called Archie Coates, and for those new into it, Archie was kind of like sort of the grandfather. I was fortunate enough to meet him when I was very young. He sadly died in '89, I think it was, and his wife Prue is a game chef. She's got a really good, cool cookbook. But the best recipe, my favourite, is a pigeon Kiev.
Oh,
okay, so it's basically it's a pigeon breast. You take it, fill it with cottage cheese, garlic cheese, whatever. Breadcrumbs, 2 minutes either side on a barbecue, wherever you choose to do it, and that has always been my favourite. And it's sort of because it comes from the Archie dynasty. That is.
So you're slicing a little.
Yeah, just slice a small pocket, put a bit of cheese in, wrap it in breadcrumbs, fry it 2 minutes either side.
And chuck it in the oven or something.
Just flash fry.
You don't even need any more than a flash fry.
No,
it gets the middle enough, does it?
2 minutes either side. Yeah,
brilliant.
But that's definitely one of my favourite. Roy, he was one of Archie's mates. He used to smoke them, and he used to thinly slice the smoked breasts and have them on toast in the morning. And funny enough, it's a shame. Years ago, I used to sell a lot of pigeon breasts to a smokery house, and they were all going out to Sweden.
Oh, really?
But, those would be my two standout. But I mean, pigeon's pretty good. It's quite versatile. I mean, it annoys me slightly that pubs and restaurants promote pigeon in the winter as opposed to the summer. I personally feel that pigeon's actually better summer meat. It goes with your salads. It's very light. And also think about what they're eating. When they're on wheat and barley and young peas and pea shoots, all that goodness, changes the flavour of the meat. They're just not on, green stuff or.
You can definitely taste when a pigeon's been feeding on rape, can't you? It's got that kind of brassicary sort of irony tang to it.
Yeah, it's just a bit. It's just not as. I mean, it's still good, but it's just not as flavoursome as when. You've had them on. Spring, summer crops all the way through, and I think the really good chefs know that. The really good chefs, they're very aware, and the guys that have sold, they'll always sort of say, what were these shot over, because it does make to those top boys, they're very aware of flavour. And we know how it affects all sort of livestock.
So before we round up with your desert island shooting, I've got one last question to ask you, and it's actually not on pigeon shooting. Now you do a lot of tuition and fit people's guns for them and stuff like that. And I was looking at your book on Amazon.
What do you mean looking at it? What do you mean looking at it on Amazon, Chris? You're supposed to click £20.
And buy multiple copies,
and then they put it in the post. Weirdly, as an author, you only make £1 a book.
Really?
Yeah.
It's on Amazon for what is it, George? £8?
£7.50, something like that.
What do you mean £7.50? Started at 20. The fucking bastards. I've got 4 at home propping up tables.
Okay, well, there's a good reason to buy it, even if you're not interested in pigeon shooting. I've got a question for you, Tom. So obviously, pigeon shooting is you do a lot more than that. But the reason I was looking on Amazon because I wanted to see what people said about your book, and I've got a question for you. It says this on Amazon. Some bloke in amongst his rant says, I fundamentally disagree with him where he tries to counter the established theory that if you can shoot well, you can shoot with any weapon. He implies that if a gun is not fitted to the firer, you will not shoot well. Complete nonsense. Time for a reply, Tom.
Sorry, go again. I was worried about my hooky gold there and running out. I was thinking, Dave, can you get us a Carlsberg, please, mate?
By the way, that's staying in. This bloke says that you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to gun fit.
Yeah, so basically, go on. If he's saying if you can shoot well, you can shoot with any weapon.
Yeah, I completely disagree with that statement. The reason being, actually, weirdly enough, the better the shot you become, the more you're used to having gun fitted, balance, barrel weights, everything set up for you. To suddenly jump out of that to go and shoot something else, you're never ever going to handle it as well as you will with a gun that's actually there for you. It's as simple as that. But gun fit in itself, gun fit only helps the top 5% of shooters. You have to be so consistent in style and technique. Otherwise, gun fit's just like having a suit made, and putting weight on, losing weight, putting weight. The suit's never going to fit. If
he's got a whole box of Carlsbergs arrived for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. So I mean, guys love to have a rant and a rage about stuff, but I've seen the benefit, and I'm lucky to have learnt from the best of the best, and still do on that front. And
so, if you can invest money in a gun, go and get it fitted and do it properly, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but it's you've got, when you're learning, it's a bit of a rock and a hard place when you start. So you've got to, number one, the length of the stock's got to be right, because you've got to be able to shoot comfortably with it. Then to actually work on where you're going. Then when you can mount gun consistently, your style technique's consistent. Then you can have the gun fitted. If you shoot competently and you shoot well and you are sound, then get your gun fitted properly. But you only have to change one minor thing, and you'll change the way that gun fits, or put on some weight, or all sorts of things. So
yeah.
It's a really tricky one. You'll get the old boys that are just bang on about, well, if you can shoot with anything. I guarantee you, and I hope George probably won't mind me. George is, as we all know, he's a phenomenal. Not this George; he's useless.
This is George Digby we're talking about here again. Second podcast in a row he's had a mention.
It's a phenomenal shot, and is I don't think, for us guys, we certainly won't see another shot like him. But if you were to give George a 20 ball, he'd probably get away with it, bits and pieces, but he's never going to shoot to the best of his ability. What he has is rigged up for him, and that's what he shoots. And it's like that for lots of, Wardy, all of them. They all, it's so professional. It's like a top golfer, like a top sportsman and anything. When you get to a certain point, your gun is, you can't just go, right, I'm going to pick this up. And not saying you can't do it, not saying you can't shoot or play that sport, but you're never going to do it to the best of your ability. And that's what.
Yeah.
More fantastic consumer advice from the Guns on Pegs podcast. We've sort of accidentally become quite informative, which wasn't what we were aiming for at all. So, Tom, I think we've been going for a while. It's about time we wrap things up. So the way we like to do that is to ask our guests, if you imagine the scenario where it's your last ever day of shooting, let's say it's being banned, money's no object, what are you going to go and do for your last day with a shotgun shooting live game?
Is that who would I take?
Where would you go? Who would you take? What would you do?
I think it would be two options, both pigeon related. I mean, I love my grouse, love my pheasants, love my partridges, especially anything wild, love my woodcock. But shooting out of a pigeon tower up in the treetops on a windy night, hopefully finishing on about 2,000 would be quite nice. Would certainly be, the person I would take would be a loader. And he would,
no friend and no speaking, just straight in with it.
But I would allow him to bring another person with him, which would hopefully be another loader, and absolutely go for it. The only other option would be a few years, 2013. It was actually, weirdly enough, one of the best years for wild game. I think it was the best all-round year for grouse for 35 years across the UK. And the pigeons, I had a phenomenal year on the pigeons, mooched into the 20,000 plus-ish. And that game fair, we discussed about comparing pigeons against grouse. It's always like the blue grouse, grey grouse, etc. And through that conversation, I said, look, what we do is, how can you compare them if they haven't been in a situation like it, which is the same? And I said, look, what we'd do is we'll turn a stubble field into a grouse moor, so that we're shooting in a similar situation.
Yeah.
And I turned a rape stubble field on August the 15th, never forget it, August the 15th, into a grouse moor using bale hides. We had 3 butts with butt sticks, and we finished on 396, and we had them coming through, and it was just phenomenal.
God.
It was just phenomenal to shoot.
Driven pigeons.
Oh yeah, still decoying, but we had to utilize the wind, and because it's just the way that they behave. So it was basically, we couldn't have birds stalling in front of us. So at all times they had to be coming through the butts, and the only way we could do that was to utilize the wind and the way that they fly. And so we did that in 13, and yeah, I have to say that really was. And you actually you're shooting pigeons, but you go into grouse mode, and you're you're a bit more aggressive, and you're. But yeah, no, that's another.
That sounds
another
fun.
So you basically, actually, like a couple of other guests we've had, you've almost had your desert island day once upon a time, and what you really want to do is recreate it, and that's quite epic, actually. That we can actually almost experience the pinnacle just every so often.
Yeah, I think it's just keeping it. I mean, there's loads to be achieved. I think the main thing is we keep educating correctly and pushing the field sports and supporting and see where we go, and hopefully everybody else will get the opportunity to have a go in generations to come. And I'm actually, weird enough, more worried about that than whether I get a chance to have my desert island day. Really,
couldn't agree more, Tom. I became a dad this time last year, and the prospect of my kids not being able to enjoy what I've been able to enjoy terrifies me. So I think that's a really, really lovely point to wrap it up on. So I'm going to say thank you very much, Tom, for joining us. Chris, tell us about the next episode. I mean, we've told people before, but
thank you so much, Tom. And I must just say, wise words you finish up on there. And obviously, just therefore, to everyone out there, just continuing to do what you can, support the organisations, do what you can, because we really do have to invest in the future in a big way. But look, Tom, thank you once again. Next time, we've got our Gundog episode with the master of the world of Gundogs, Ben Randall, and he's got something quite exciting to share with us. So I'm really looking forward to that. So that will be up with you very soon. But yeah, thank you, Tom.
Cheers, guys. Absolute pleasure.
Good man.
Right, so all that remains for me to say is to thank everybody for listening, and once again, thanks to Tom for joining us. Before we go, as per usual, there's a final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas, letting us know where you're listening from, all that sort of thing. Email us at pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we read it out in the next episode or one after that, we'll send you some garters. Until the next episode, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.
Are you guys going to put some clothes on now?